Unit 9. International Markets. Track 14.
Perhaps you could summarise for our listeners the points you've made so far, Ian. You started by telling us what free trade is.
Right. I defined it as a situation in which goods come into and out of a country without any controls or taxes. Countries which truly believe in free trade try to liberalise their trade. That's to say, they take away barriers to trade. They remove things which stop people trading freely. They have open borders and few controls of goods at customs.
Unit 9. International Markets. Track 15.
OK, then you gave us several examples of barriers to trade.
Yes, I said that there are two main barriers, tariffs and subsidies. Tariffs are taxes on imported goods, so that the imports cannot compete so well against domestic products. Subsidies are money paid to domestic producers so that they can sell their goods more cheaply than foreign competitors. Tariffs and subsidies are barriers to trade because when people are given a choice, generally they will buy the cheapest product.
You mentioned other barriers, less important ones perhaps.
I talked about quotas, which limit the quantity of a product which can be imported. And I discussed other restrictions on trade, such as expensive licenses for importers, which add greatly to costs, and regulations relating to documents which a company must have to export its goods to certain countries. The documents can be very complicated and difficult to complete, so they slow down trading.
Unit 9. International Markets. Track 16.
I asked you if free trade was always a good thing.
And I answered, in principle, yes, it is a good thing. It's beneficial to countries.
Why?
Countries which open their markets usually have a policy of deregulation. That's to say, they free their companies to compete in markets without government control or subsidies. Because of this, consumers in free trade areas are offered a wider range of high-quality products at lower prices. People in those areas can move to the most productive parts of the economy and get better jobs with higher wages or salaries, OK?
So why do so many countries protect their industries and not allow free markets?
I gave 3 reasons, if you remember. Firstly, some people say, why should we practice free trade if other nations compete unfairly? For example, dumping is fairly common in international trade. When companies dump goods in overseas markets, they sell goods at very low prices, usually for less than it costs the company to produce the goods. Companies can usually only do that when they're heavily subsidised by their governments. And secondly, many people believe that strategic industries must be protected. These are industries that are very important to the economy: steel, power, communications, and so on. In the United States, many Americans think that the steel industry should be protected against cheap imports from Brazil and other countries. If the US depends too much on foreign-made steel, they argue, this could be bad in a time of war. Finally, some say that in developing countries, industries need to be protected until they're strong enough to compete in world markets. This is the infant industry argument. Certain industries have to be protected until they can stand on their own feet, as it were. And my final point was that, throughout the world, there is a trend towards liberalising trade and removing trade barriers. The most successful economies tend to have open markets, and most of their industries have been deregulated.